Hello, welcome to my top 10 science fiction films. This is my favorite genre when it comes to movie going, and I especially like low sci-fi or near future universes with only a couple of exotic elements blended into mundane reality. So with that, my number 10 is Mars Attacks. The fun factor on this film is through the roof. It's so vibrant and exciting. They did a fantastic job with pure entertainment value, and it's really rewarding in so many ways. Exciting locales, great performances, and they somehow put a twist on the CG aliens where it's not bothersome that they're so obviously computer generated, just because they have been made into such funny characters. So it's not bothersome in the way that CG can be in other films when they're trying to go for a more serious situation, but the technology hasn't quite caught up. My number 9 is The Fifth Element. Grand universe, imaginatively rich, excellent acting. They've fleshed out a world that is both evocative and dangerous. Extremely well done acting, just bombast, and such a high rewatchability because of the just once again the fun factor. It's through the roof. Super exciting, and the first time watching the film was probably one of my my best theater going experiences. Just great fun. My number 8. We're getting into the more serious films now. Under the Skin. This is the newest film on the list. I think it came out in 2014. And it's evocative in another way. It's a difficult watch. It has such a plodding pace, and the unreality of everything doesn't come from, well, in many cases it doesn't come from CG or from any overt science fiction themes. It just comes from the pacing, taking reality and transforming it into something alien by virtue of it being so plodding. It's an odd film. The CG elements, when they come into play, are mind-boggling, and I enjoyed it so much. It's kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, where like if you're going to rewatch it, it's best to have something distracting you, like you can be reading articles on Wikipedia or playing an iOS game or something. And then when the portions of the film come around that are so jugular, you can transfix on those and appreciate them again. Like it's a wild ride, and I like the disturbing element. It's disturbing in this everyday way. And some of the films later in this list also tackle making a normal situation into an alien situation by implanting elements that are off in some way. And it doesn't require a laser pistol or any other like sci-fi tropes. It can be created. This situation of unease and this unsettled tension can come about with a very non-science fiction-y movie-making methods. I'm going to let the cat in. Okay. My number 7 is Solaris, the remake with George Clooney. I've not seen the old film. And once again, this is such a good film to me because what they do is, you better watch the movie, this is kind of a spoiler, but they create this alien presence that is somehow not just like a monster that we're trying to defeat or something that's trying to take over the universe or destroy Earth. Like the alien presence, I especially like films where there's not necessarily a humanity that they've imbued into the alien presence, but this weirdness where you can't tell quite what the motivations of the alien forms are. They don't really adhere to any rules or any mores that human beings would usually adhere to. Taking the idea of an alien creature or a very alien situation where humans are out of their element and making that alien being or that alien presence into something that's really emotionally ambiguous, where there's not really necessarily a motive of destruction or a motive of any kind, just this vague, unsettled situation where we are encountering something as the audience that we don't really know how to evaluate it using any of the methods that we use when we're evaluating things as human beings. And this film does a really good job of slowly building up to that, and then there's a beautiful scene where the husband has reached a blockade, at least in my mind, where what he thinks of as his wife has somehow been absolved into just this odd lingering presence. It's great. I need to rewatch it. Okay, my number 6 is Primer. An excellent film. This is exactly what I was talking about when you think of the real human environment, the real world that we all inhabit, and then just dropping a big dose of zany, otherworldly sci-fi elements into it and making it really believable. It's a film about time travel and a couple guys just figure out how to move through time in their garage. The film becomes unhinged in a remarkable way. As the audience member, you really take on some of the main characters' unease, fear and tension, anxiety and paranoia, and you can feel the mental unraveling. It's a landmark of movie making. The guy who made it, I read an interview with him once, and he edited it for like a year after they had finished principal filming, and he was really meticulous about every scene and shot, and it really comes through because as things start going crazy, you're right there with the characters, and it's done in a really clever way. They don't overtly tell you anything about what's going on. Through a series of shots, you become just as unhinged as the main protagonists. My number 5 is a film called Coherence. This was a no-budget film. It's so good. It's about some people having a dinner party, and so once again, just a regular everyday situation, and a comet that hasn't been near Earth in millennia, well, I don't know, thousands of years, is passing over that area of the country where they live while the dinner party's going on. And I really don't want to give much away about this because I think everyone should see it. They begin to experience odd things. First of all, there's a power outage, and as they stray outside of this living room, which is the principal set for most of this movie, they start encountering, I don't want to say an alien presence, but they start encountering some weird things are going on in that town. The ending is spot on. Like it's very, very well done. The acting is all good. I was right there with them. Like all the movies on my list, there are minor flaws, but the overall experience, and when I came away from the movie after watching it the first time, I was like, wow, this was so much fun. It takes you down these great avenues. They did a spectacular job of blending human nature and the different emotions that humans can have that are based in anxiety or discomfort or raw fear or misunderstanding or not being able to really cope or believe what's going on in the environment around you, and seeing how those people react. They did a really good job with some really cool cuts and some really awesome scenes toward the end of the movie. It wraps up really, really well. My number 4 is a film called The Thing, the old one, not the remake. This has something in common with the number 1 film on my list, in that there is a suffocating unease. In The Thing, it's because they're on like some Arctic research base, and there's really not any viable means of escape. And so this isolation feeds into the paranoia, the fear. The acting is so good in the movie. And once the alien presence is rearing its head, the human notions or the human interactions come to the fore, and it's just this beautifully acted film where everybody seems legitimately in the moment, behaving and reacting as human beings would when confronted with something so mind-bogglingly, obscenely alien and freakish. It's a film that is really, really, really cool. It's a good movie. Okay, my number 3, Blade Runner. I've seen this movie a bunch of times, and one time I had the 4-disc like master edition of the DVD release, and I watched every single disc of special features and all the documentaries about it and everything. It is a wonderful film. It does such a good job of universe building, and the idea of intelligence, artificial intelligence, and human characteristics being built into machines and how those machines would react. It's been done in a lot of different films, but I think Blade Runner is such a landmark film because it's so gritty. There's a sense of unease in the audience that slowly builds. The set design is a near future city, but there's so many sprinklings of odd futuristic tech, and there's such a really well developed, fleshed out like culture that they've somehow implanted into the city, and you can feel like it really is a continuation or a futurization of modern life if it was in more of a dystopian world. And then you just drop in these cyborg creatures, and they have such a human... It's a good film because you have... It's almost as if it's taking a look at what it means to live in a dystopian city center and where the real humanity lies. Who has the most human characteristics? Who is clinging most strongly to life? When you live in such a lifeless, cold world, very much akin to some of the cities that are on Earth right now. It's a great look at life, what it means to be alive, and our perspective when we gaze inward and think about what lends us our humanity and where it's sourced, and where our motives are pointed and why. Number 2, Total Recall, the old one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Extremely good movie. This was probably when I saw this when it came out. I was very young, and I thought, this is it. This is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life. I think it's held up really, really well. They've crafted another dystopian universe where humanity is embroiled in just this drudgery of life, or at least the main protagonists are, and exceptionally skilled set design and world building, good acting. It is a tour de force. It is an expansive, exciting, thrill-a-minute. Around every corner there's something odd going on, and it's the perfect blend of, I mean, it's just a roller coaster ride of science fiction ideas, and it really makes for an extremely good movie-going experience. I love the movie Total Recall. Okay, number 1. My favorite film, the science fiction genre, is Alien. The slow build, the sense of dread, the very good acting. It's kind of like Ghostbusters, where it's just everyday life, and I really love that they inject something strange into everyday life. People just going about their jobs, and suddenly they're confronted with something they just cannot understand, and the mind shuts down. The rational mind can't cope. And as you're watching the film, the brilliant part of it is that the unease just is allowed to build so slowly. The set design is spectacular. The sense of isolation I was talking about earlier, no escape. Communication systems were primitive. They're way out in space, and no one's ever going to, you can't appeal to anyone other than the personalities who are there on board with you. And they're not prepared to cope with anything like that. It's not a situation, it's not a military vessel. There's nothing they can do. Like, even science can't explain it. There were crew members on board who, I'm sure that they were well versed in the scientific phenomena and the different things that were out there in the universe of their time, but when something so alien is there in front of you, the mind just recoils, and it's the greatest sci-fi film, I think, because of that blending of the horror sci-fi elements, the very human situation, and the slow build. I love it. I like it a lot more than the second film, Aliens, because of the raw emotional terror, the build-up, and the dissolution. The brain just disintegrates. The rational mind that is structured in so many ways to cope with human reality and human ideas just being shredded to pieces when something so fearsome, something so alien becomes a part of your world. Alright? Sci-fi movies, my favorite. Thanks for watching.